It's a big day at Tampa Bay Downs, including 4 stakes races and a Kentucky Derby prep. Let's cap the card. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and welcome to this episode of Capping the Card here on NYRA Bets YouTube. So glad to have you here and so glad that you decided to join us today. The premise of Capping the Card, pretty simple. I'm going to go through all 12 races on Saturday's Sam F. Davis card at Tampa Bay Downs. I'm going to give you my top pick, my top value play. Now, before we get to that, I want to make sure to remind you to press that like and subscribe button today. Always helps to press the like button. And then listen, subscribing completely free of cost. Just lets you know when new videos are dropping on the NYRA Bets YouTube channel, whether it's race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, special programming, and so much more. Just this week, we have a episode on Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks with Kaylee Shapiro. I was joined by Acacia Clement on another episode of Snowbirds. So we always have a lot of great content on the channel. So make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. Well, like I said, welcome to Capping the Card. The premise, pretty straightforward. And we're going to run through all 12 of these races. We're going to do it in under an hour. Make sure that you can have an efficient time, learn a little bit more about the card, try to find some value. It's interesting. This is an interesting 12-race card. I think if you like chalk, there's some heavy chalk horses that you can lean on. If you like to go for bombs, there's some interesting bombs in this race and throughout this card. So I try to kind of sprinkle a little bit of both into that, hence the top pick and the top value play. So, like I said, sometimes the value play is a horse I think has a really good chance at winning and upsetting the field. Sometimes I think the value play is a horse simply that's going to outrun their odds and could be 20-1 that I think might run second. Maybe a horse to use in an exactas, something like that. So, listen, going to be a lot of fun. Took a week off last week because, man, I had to recover from Pegasus World Cup. That was rough. We had a couple of really strong winning ROI weeks before that, and then, man, Gulfstream Park took me to the cleaners. So we're back. We're going to get ready. We're going to have a lot of fun here on this episode. But let's dive into this 12-race card. And the way to do that is on race number 1, which is an $8,000 claimer. That's how we're getting started, folks. And post time is 12:05. This is a 1 mile and 40-yard race for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares. It's on the dirt. I'm going to go with a little bit of a price with my top pick, and that's the number 3, Highland Holiday. You know, this horse broke its maiden at Monmouth Park back in August, actually August 17th, day of my Uncle Grant's birthday. But this one won with Paco Lopez aboard that day, sitting a tracking trip. Listen, got a 29 buyer speed figure, not going to set the world on fire, but then went to the bench for the better part of 5 months and just came back recently and competed at this level last time out, going 7 furlongs for trainer Mike Denny, finished 6th that day, but ran a 42 buyer speed figure. Now Paco hops back aboard this horse, and I just think you're going to see a better effort second time off this sort of a layoff. Denny tends to be a little bit better in those spots with his horses winning at a 17% rate over the last couple of years. The concern that I have with some of these other horses, quite frankly, is, you know, you look at a horse like Don't Tell Amy on the far outside. These are non-winners at 2. So, you know, that's a horse that just broke its maiden last time out after 10 tries. You look at a horse like West Coast Song, 1 for 13. I actually think that horse is better on the turf. So, you know, what are you going to get there on the dirt? You look at a horse, you know, another one you could potentially look at in this race is a horse like Ladies Chant, 1 for 15 with 9 underneath finishes. So a horse that just gets close but doesn't quite win and just finally won last time out. I think the logical alternative, if I was to find, you know, if I'm building an early pick 5 ticket, I think you have to include a horse like number 4, American Peaches, 7-2 for Mario Lopez. That's a nice horse that at this level that's been very competitive, potentially could continue to improve, has run some very competitive buyer speed figures last couple of times out while finishing 3rd. So I think that one could be interesting. The value play that I ultimately went to in this one, not huge value, but a horse that I would absolutely include in my horizontals is Wonderful Venezuela, 6-1 for Ronaldo Yanez. And this one has Cipriano Gil on the mount. And this is an interesting horse because the horse really ran on synthetic and turf most of its career and broke its maiden on the synthetic at Gulfstream Park when it was with the Victor Barboza Jr. barn. Then went to the turf, ran a couple of really nice turf races at this kind of claiming 7,500, 8,000 level up at Meadowlands, nearly won both of those, and then came down and ran at this level, at this distance, on the dirt, finished 3rd that day. And then last time out, you know, the horse just looked terrible. And he went off as the betting line favorite, post time favorite at 2-1, and ended up finishing well back that day. You had a really strong outfield and was basically just eased up towards the end. Didn't even earn a buyer speed figure for that effort. That last time out was so bad that I'm almost willing to draw a line through it. That's something my friend and colleague Sarah El Badwi and I talk about a lot. She's always willing to kind of, when an effort is just so bad, you just almost draw a line through it. You go, listen, it can't possibly be that bad again. This horse has been so consistent the last several times out. 6-1, it's not a huge price, but I think, Wonderful Venezuela gives you a little bit of options there in that very first race. Well, let's go to race number 2 on the card, which is a $16,000 claimer for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile and a 16th. And this one is on the grass. And, there's a couple of ways I think you could potentially go in this race. I ultimately went to the far outside, not all the way outside, but I went pretty far outside to the number 10 Gilded Age for Jose D'Angelo. And this one, if you just look 2 back, this is the race this horse is set up to win, right? This was a claiming 16, going a mile and a 16th at Tampa Bay Downs. So has won at this level recently over this surface. And most importantly, won with a wide trip, breaking from post position 10. So that's why I wasn't too detracted from picking a horse that has a pretty far outside post in this spot. Last time out, stepped up and faced handicap competition and obviously did not run quite as well. I didn't think got the best trip that day. Now you get Irad Ortiz Jr. up for D'Angelo. Quite a rider upgrade there. So I think Irad's going to have a big day. He usually does when he goes to these other tracks. Though it is notable he's only 1 for 9 this year at Tampa Bay, but I think some of that changes a little bit today. But that's one that at 4-1, admittedly outside post, there might be some traffic issues or some issues of working out the right trip, but I don't know. I'm willing to try to beat a horse like Sonic Speed at a short price for Darian Rodriguez, who's 1 for 26 at this meet. And I know this horse ran better last time out and, certainly has some ability here, but also is a horse that last couple of times out has been finishing underneath for the new barn since switching over from Jose D'Angelo. Jose Delgado. In terms of a price in this race, listen, there's a few. I think you could go with some bombs in this one because you could look at a horse like Policy Option at 9-2. I think is certainly a logical horse, one that does tend to finish underneath a lot more than wins, though. That's why I really kept him off as a win contender, as a top pick. Eddie the Great on the inside. Maybe that horse gets the trip, ran pretty well 2 back, very similar to Gilded Age in terms of winning it, claiming 16 2 back, and then not running quite as well in the handicap last time out. So maybe that one could run pretty well at 4-1, but I'm going to give you a really big price. And that is the number 6 Lamplighter Jack for Joel Campbell and Jesus Castanon. And this one is 30-1 on the morning line. Why do I like this horse? Well, this horse, interesting, had been running in some pretty tough competition. Grade 1, ran the Shoemaker Mile back in May 2023. But even before that, ran competitively in some decent races. Ran 6th in a 9-horse field in a grade 3 out of Golden Gate. Won a starter allowance out at Santa Anita. Has a lot of wins and has some really nice back class. But was off for nearly a year and a half, from July 2023 to January 2025. And is now second back from that significant layoff. Yes, we're dropping in Class 2 claiming ranks. That's always a little bit of a question mark after being protected first time out, running a 16 starter allowance. But this horse had really good speed at one point. And there's not a ton of speed in this race. And I just wonder if this horse gets out up front and maybe starts to feel a little bit better. Second back from that really substantial layoff. Has had a couple of works, has had at least a work since then. And you wonder if the speed might be gone. But if this horse has any sort of a speed, I think you're going to see it here. The other thing to note, Campbell put this horse in a 5-furlong sprint last time out. Obviously this horse is best going a little bit longer, 2 for 3 winning at this distance. And I just think at 30-1, hey, take a shot. This horse gets up on the front end. Maybe he fades a little bit late, but I feel like you got a little bit of conditioning in him last time out. You got another work in him before this race. And it's worth a shot to see maybe if the horse has any of that previous magic that we saw. This horse used to run 80, 90 buyer speed figures. So if it runs anywhere close to those numbers, it's going to win this race easily. It even improves maybe 10 or 15 points from that 55 buyer last time out. You're going to see a potential winner, or at least a horse that hits the board. So listen, it's a huge price. It's a big swing. It's really throwing one downfield, whatever metaphor from the sports you want to use. But I just think there's something there with that horse at 30-1 that I wouldn't leave him off my vertical tickets. It's not a horse I necessarily think will win, but a horse that I'm going to include in my exactas, my tries, certainly my supers, if I'm betting this race vertically. Well, let's get to the meat of the card, and let's kick things off with one of the maiden special weight races on the card. And this one is a $53,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old fillies going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And there's a few interesting horses in this race. And I think you could certainly look, one of Christophe Clement's horses, Curlane, 7-2. Horse would make plenty of sense on that inside rail, though I do always worry about a horse breaking from the inside rail in a sprint that does not have great early speed. That is a little bit of a concern. A horse showed that she can pass a lot of people, though, last time out. Might want longer than 6.5, but we'll see. The horse I'm playing against here is the number 3 Salted, who's your 2-1 morning line favorite, getting Lasix for the first time, has not run since the grade 1 spin away where she finished well back in 8th place, 27 lengths behind Immersive. Before that, she finished second to Immersive and only by 2 lengths in a maiden special weight at Saratoga. So Immersive, of course, went on to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, went on to become the champion 2-year-old female. So they're, went against some very, very nice horses. But I know I'd rather teach juniors up. I know Mark Cassie's good at getting horses back from a little bit of a layoff, getting Lasix for the first time, but still at a very short price, I want to see this one run one more time. And I just have a feeling maybe this one needs one more effort before you see the best out of this horse, and just willing to play against this one. So where am I going as an alternative? I'm going to horse Kiss Me Slow for Trad Brown, Flavian Pratt. Oh, by the way, the two of them have not lost when they've teamed up together this year at Tampa Bay Downs. A perfect 4 for 4. Pratt, in fact, 5 mounts at Tampa Bay Downs, 4 victories. Not bad. Chad only winning at 41% at Tampa Bay. So, a veritable, losing streak there at only 41% compared to, Pratt's 80% win rate. But anyway, Pratt stays aboard this one, gets Lasix for the first time. This one also ran in that Immersive Salted race, and that was the debut effort back in July. Then went to the bench, didn't run until November, came back and ran second, very close second, and showed the ability to pass some horses late, I thought. Maybe faded, maybe tired a little bit late in that race. But that was also going a mile and over a sloppy sealed track. You like to see the fact that the third place horse that she beat, she's fascinating, came back to win next time out and won impressively too for trainer Tony Dutrow, and did that going a mile over a fast track at Aqueduct while improving that buyer speed figure significantly from a 50 to a 77. So gives you confidence that a horse like Kiss Me Slow maybe can run back and run pretty well. And like I said, getting Lasix for the first time, Chadit and Flavian are just so tough to beat here. And if you're going to give me a second choice, like if this horse is genuinely going to be the second choice and Salted goes off as the favorite, I'm not saying it's a price, but at least you're not betting chalk in this race. Now, in terms of a value play, listen, first, debut horses from Shug McGahee, it is reading the tea leaves. It's the definition of trying to read the tea leaves, right? Cassier, number 10, 8-1. I love Shug, but Shug does not always love first out winners. But that said, he's got some better numbers than you would think. Sprinting on dirt with first out horses over the last 5 years, actually 12%, and has been doing pretty well at Tampa Bay Downs under those conditions as well. And Shug's been doing well at Tampa in general. He's winning 42% of his mounts, only had 12 entries so far, but still, I think that's interesting. Samuel Marin up on the mount. This one, sired by City of Light, and, I think certainly is out of a very productive turf mare, but has produced some nice horses as well, including a horse like Ben Doog, who, of course, is stakes placed in that Suburban this past year and won in debut as well, overseas, admittedly, but won in debut there. The full sibling is a horse, She Be Boss. And while that horse is still looking to break its maiden and it's down in the maiden claiming ranks, really perked up on dirt the first time, started its career on the turf. So I don't know. This horse is interesting enough. Shug has this one firing off a bullet gate work back on January 21st of 48-3 bullet gate, first to 12. It's promising to see the horse showed some speed out of the gate. And if you're going to give me 8-1 on this type of a horse, I'll use it. And this is also interesting. The sibling, the full sibling that I mentioned, who is still a maiden, sold for $55,000. This one sold for $400,000. So it tells me there's something there with this horse. And admittedly, a lot of times Shug McGahee, when he gets horses ready, he's not getting them ready for a 6.5 furlong sprint. He's getting them ready to go long. That's usually Shug's game. But still, 8-1 Cassier, there's not necessarily a ton else in this field. Maybe you look at a horse like She's a Gemma for Bill Mott, sired by Nyquist, always a sire I like a lot. That's another one, but I wonder if that horse gets bet down a little bit from that 6-1 morning line. I think you get more of an honest price on a horse like Cassier at 8-1. So that's kind of where my value play is in this race. Well, let's head to the race number 4, which is a $75,000 optional claimer. And we're going a mile on the turf for 3-year-old fillies. And this is the stretch where we hit some chalk, ladies and gentlemen. I really tried to make a case for Pretty Lavish for Grand Motion, 3-1 on the morning line with Irad Ortiz Jr. up. And this one's making the first start since October. Debuted at a smaller track over in Ireland, won that day over soft ground, earned a 62 time form rating, which does not translate into a particularly strong buyer, is getting Lasix for the first time. It was hard for me to take that one at a short price. I just didn't necessarily love the competition that she ran against that day overseas. And I'm not 100% sure how good she is. Graham's other horse, Carpe Diem, second back, or I shouldn't say second back, but is making a second start in North America, is kind of second back from a little bit of a layoff too. That one gets Brian Hernandez Jr. up 8-1 on the morning line. Maybe that horse continues to take a step forward for sure. Lemon Peppa Steppa, 7-2 was too short of a price for me on a horse that's drawing far outside and is going to probably get a wide trip. Ultimately, I landed on the favorite here, and that is Forward Deployed at 8-5 for Jad Brown. This one's coming out of stakes competition, is getting Lasix now for the first time. Got to win 2 back at Gulfstream Park. Now gets Flavian Pratt up on the mount. That's always a plus move. So, listen, had been facing much tougher competition last time. Now I think will be sitting, I think, a perfect trip. Has good speed to be able to ensure good position going into that first turn and coming out of the chute there at Tampa Bay Downs. And I just think this one, $800,000 purchase. There's some expectations there for this daughter of Warfront, and has really not run many bad races considering the level of competition that she's faced, and has been very consistent from a buyer speed figure standpoint. Has actually ran her best buyer speed figure last time out. I'm expecting another step forward with that addition of Lasix. Now, in terms of a value play in this one, yeah, I went to that Carpe Diem horse for Grand Motion. I don't like that horse, as much of a as much of a top pick, but I think it's a value play. It's not bad. Now, my official value play, though, I will say is the number one, Flip Flops, and it's not just because I like to wear flip flops, but this one is trained by Mark Casse, jockeyed by Dylan Davis, second back from a little bit of a freshening. This one was kind of pushed up closer to the pace last time with Dylan aboard, and that really has not been her game to this point. She's really come from a little further off the pace. That's how she won her maiden at Ellis Park, was coming from well off the pace with Luan Machado aboard that day. Still, I feel like she's been consistent the last couple of times in terms of those buyer speed figures, sired by War of Will, out of a Munnings Dam. So I like that combination of stamina and speed. And I just think there's something interesting here, saving the ground from that inside rail. It'll be interesting to see the ride Dylan gives her this time. But Dylan's been riding so well. This one's also been training really well leading up to this race. Fired off another strong turf workout down at Palm Meadows before this race. Now, she might be a little bit of a workout warrior because she's got a lot of nice works leading up, and it don't necessarily translate to huge efforts on the track. But from a buyer speed figure standpoint, she absolutely matches up here. 8-1, you're getting a little bit of an honest price for a horse that should be sitting kind of a pocket trip on the rail and get the right sort of trip and get the first crack at the front runners. Well, let's hit to some of the stakes action here, and we'll go to race number 5, which is the Pelican Stakes. And again, this is where we hit a little bit of a chalky stretch because I have a hard time getting around Nutella Fella, who is your morning line favorite for trainer Gary Contessa, 2-1. This is a horse that broke its maiden debut, then won the Hopeful at massive odds at 54-1 odds, and was a huge upset that day. Comes back several months later off of a long layoff and runs a 96 Beyer speed figure and finishes third in that grade 1 Woody Stevens. This is a grade 1 placed horse behind Bookham Dano and Prince of Monaco that day. Admittedly, got the right sort of pace set up to run into. This one does like to come from off the pace, though stalked the pace at Delaware Park going 5.5 in debut. So could sit a little bit closer potentially. Junior Alvarado up. This one got a race under his belt last time out. Had not run since that Woody Stevens from June until January. It's so great to see this horse second back from a long layoff. This horse has just not been able to string together races, and it's great to see that he's healthy. He's coming back on less than a month's rest, and he got a little bit of a freshening last time out, was able to pass some horses, was just second best to a horse Chrome Ghost, who had a little bit more better form at that point coming into that race. But I just think this horse makes a lot of sense. And it's hard for me to make a case for a horse like Caramel Chip, who, when that horse is off Lasix, just doesn't win. And is a horse that just really fails to live up to the expectations sometimes that you might think this horse has. Granted, has Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. Last time Irad was up, the horse did get the win, but that was also against $25,000 optional claiming competition. So it's hard to make another case. Even a horse like Pure Class for David Fawkes with Paco up, okay, but against this level of competition, I'm just not sure. Ultimately, the horse I went to at the value play was number 6, Dreaming Icona. An interesting horse, and if you just isolate the dirt races, this horse absolutely fits in this race. Problem is you have a lot of other races on the turf, on the synthetic. This horse is coming back from a little bit of a layoff for Aldana Spieth. Her husband, Scott Spieth, is riding is on the mount. This one's had a lot of works leading up to this debut, has had some strong bullet works leading up to it as well, some 5 furlong works. So you like to see that there's been conditioning here for this race. If this horse can run back to any of its dirt form, it's got a real chance to win at 6-1, and maybe is the only contender to Nutella Fella. I'm not sure I have all the confidence that that's going to happen, but at 6-1 underneath, I'm willing to include this horse on some of my exactas. I think this one's at least a little bit interesting, and you can make a little bit of a case for. But like I said, it's really Nutella Fella's race to lose, in my opinion, in that Pelican Stakes. Now, if we go to the Minaret, which is for the ladies going 6 furlongs on the dirt, this is another one where it's hard to get around the favorite. And so I promise, later in the card, we got a lot of bombs. We got a lot of big prices up top. But this one, Nick Style, 7-5 for Bill Mott. I mean, how can you knock what this horse has done? This horse is 5 for 6 winning in her career. The only loss is in the Gallant Bloom to Ways and Means. That's it. And otherwise has never been defeated and really never been pressed. I mean, never really been challenged. Has some big Beyer speed figure efforts coming out of facing Florida competition last time out. But, honestly, don't blame Mott for just taking the horse down there. Gets a nice, easy win in a $100,000 stakes race. Why not? Former $25,000 purchase has earned over $328,000 in her career. So she's one that has good early speed, but last time out showed the dimension of being able to track the pace, make a move. It's also nice to see the second place horse, Our Disaster, comes back to win next time out as well. And when you look at where the other horses are, I'm just not sure that they're up to this level of competition, particularly Dazzling Blue, who I think a lot of people will look to as an alternative for Brad Cox. This one's getting the blinkers on. Maybe that makes the difference. The problem is this horse started her career a perfect 3 for 3 and has been nothing but a bridesmaid ever since then. And you might be able to say this horse is a little bit of a one-figure horse. That victory ride from back in 2023 ran that 94 Beyer, has never come close to running that again. Maybe the blinkers are what makes the difference. Flavian Pratt up on the mount, and he rode her that day in that victory ride. So maybe he's going to get the best out of her. And maybe the blinkers allow her to maybe pass some horses, be a little bit more aggressive, but she's passed horses in other races. She's second back from a little bit of a layoff. So she's going to run her race. It's going to be today, but I just at 3-1, a little too short of a price for me to really take in this spot. So where did I go as a value play? Well, I went to the number 1, Opus 42. This is a horse that loves Tampa Bay Downs. 3 for 4 winning at Tampa Bay Downs. won at this distance before, won the Gasparilla, if you remember, back in 2023, and won it at a little bit of a decent price too that day at 8-1, and then was stretched out and did a lot of work going 2 turns. And you could look at, and the other thing is like the Charlestown Oaks is 2 turns, also over a wet track. The Beaumont was probably way too tough in terms of a grade 2, in terms of a 1-turn race. All the others are 2-turn races. And actually, she got a win in the Wayward Last over a horse like Dream Concert, Magical Loot. So she's had some nice races going 2 turns, but I think the cut back to 1 turn and coming back to very familiar settings at Tampa Bay Downs, those are all positives for Arnaud Delacroix and Daniel Centeno, the jockey. I think this one at 12-1. If you like Nick Style up top, this is a horse I'd throw in those kind of just ice cold exactas to add a little bit of value at 12-1 on the morning line. Could float up more because I think Nick Style is going to go off as a much shorter price. Well, let's head to the next race on the card, which is a $53,000 maiden special weight for the 3-year-olds, going 1 mile and 40 yards on the dirt. Now we're getting into some prices, folks. And part of the reason is Pletcher's got a first-time runner, Weekend and Whiskey, 3-1. The Dam is yet to produce a first-out winner, over 4. This one's sired by Justify, admittedly. Has I rat up? It's going to take way too much money. I just can't. Chad Brown's got a good magic in there. Van Ginkel. Nice horse. Dam didn't produce a first-out winner first time, and the sibling is actually a turf horse for Mark Glatt out west. So again, interesting to see. Neither horse, I believe, is Triple Crown nominated, which I also think is kind of interesting because there are a few horses in this race which are, including the number 8 McCorvey, who is the son of Songbird, sired by Curlin. For trainer Bill Mott, has a nice bullet 4 furlong work leading up to this race. Still, Songbird has not really produced great offspring to this point. So yes, $1 million purchase, big pedigree, willing to try to play against this one a little bit. Ultimately, where did I go? I went to number 1, Candy Town, 6-1 for Pletcher. Brian Hernandez Jr. up. This one debuted on the turf, actually. Ran a pretty decent race against a horse, Super Times. I'm going to come back to that horse in a second. But this one makes a lot of sense in terms of Spadestown out of Candy Ride Mare. You could go either way in terms of the turf or dirt. But I like the combination of Spadestown with a Candy Ride Mare. And, so you get a little bit of that distance underneath. You have a little bit more sprinter influence up top. Calumet owned and bred. And the reason I wanted to bring up Super Times is that horse just came back after winning in debut and beating Candy Town, came back to run second to River Thames. That horse really dazzled people last weekend in the Holy Bull undercard, winning a big-time optional claiming race and really putting that horse on the Kentucky Derby trail. So lost to a horse, so Candy Town lost to a horse that lost to a very good horse in this next race. Also notable that Super Times went from turf to dirt in that next race. So again, there are just some things to make me think this horse is also Triple Crown nominated. Maybe there's some expectations here. Maybe not for the Kentucky Derby, but maybe this is a horse that ready for the Belmont. You never know. And now Todd's stretching this one out to go 1 mile and 40. I think that's kind of interesting. It has the foundation already first time out going a mile and running well, showing the ability to pass horses and finish strong with Edgar Zayas up that day. Now, 6-1 is my top choice. I got to go a little higher for my value play. Going to go to a horse that, listen, I don't know if this one can get the distance. It's going to be a question mark. The number 4, Madhouse, 8-1 for David Van Winkle. And admittedly, Ademar Santos, 8% winning jockey, 7% winning trainer. It's not exactly the sort of winning connections that you expect. It's a Vekoma influence up top out of a Munnings mare. It looks a little bit more sprint based for sure, but this horse ran second to John Hancock in debut. And this horse did it without Lasix at 22-1. Now, it's important to remember, John Hancock won that race with Lasix. And John Hancock is your second choice in today's Sam F. Davis. So this could be a horse that might just indicate to you how well John Hancock's going to run later in the day. You never want to make those one-to-one correlations, but it's notable. This one is getting Lasix now for the first time. And since that January 8th race has worked twice, and oh, by the way, fired off 2 bullets, a 59-4, 5 furlong, and a 47-1, 4 furlong. 8-1, I really like the value that you're going to potentially get on this horse. People are going to see the works. They're going to see the past performances. They're going to go, maybe this horse is worth a little bit of a bet. But the thing is, when you have a Chad in here, when you have two Todds, when you have $1 million Songbird, this is a horse. I'm not going to say it's going to get overlooked, but 8-1, you're going to get every piece of 8-1, I think, on a horse that might just be really under the radar, very, very good for connections that may not be known for it. So Madhouse at 8-1, a horse I definitely am interested in playing. Let's go to race number 8, and that's a $32,000 optional claimer for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares going 1 1/8 on the turf. Excuse me. And, this is a race where, again, we get back to how do we get around the chalk? And it was kind of hard to get around this one. The number 6 lucky combination for Christophe Clement. I rad up on the mount. Like I said, I rad Flavian. I think they're going to have big days. Try to play against him in some of the later races, but I think early in the card, they're going to have some big races. And it's usually funny. You can tell when Irad turns it on early in the card. Right away what type of day Irad's going to have, usually by his first mount. But this is a horse second back from a little bit of a freshening and getting back on the turf after running in a $100,000 handicap last time out and finishing third, by the way, in that race. Now running against probably a slightly easier competition and certainly has the buyer speed figures to really walk over this field a little bit in terms of running at 81 last time on the turf. So lucky combination 8-5, short price, but it's a hard horse to kind of get around. Horses won a couple of ways as well. One coming from well off the pace to break its maiden, and then one going gate to wire, and again, a $25,000 optional claimer on the Tapeta back in March. So the horse has some versatility for Irad. I would hope that Irad kind of has this horse tracking the pace. That's the way he kind of ran this horse 2 back. So I'm hoping something similar. And this horse, honestly, was really stretching out, going 1 5/16, 1.5 miles. Interesting. We're shortening up a little bit to 1 1/8 here. I think that's probably for the best for lucky combination. Now, if I'm going to go chalk as my top selection, I got to give you a little bit of a price, at least for a value play, and that's Runaway Diva, I should say. The number 8 horse at 10-1 for Michelle Hemingway with Daniel Centeno up. This one is also interesting. Isolate the turf races is what I would say. You could say, well, Matthew's 0 for 3 on the turf. I know, and I'm not saying he's going to win this race, but he's a horse that I would include in exactas. Because if you isolate the turf races, he ran 4th against $75,000 claiming competition, including a horse, a Primera Vista, who came back to win next time out. Then steps up and runs 3rd to a couple of nice horses, Eastern Empress and Union Suit at Colonial in a $70,000 allowance race, basically. And then last time out at this level, runs a really competitive second to Scarlet Poppy. There's some things I like here, and this horse is second back from a bit of a freshening. And again, I think you could see this horse take a step forward on the turf this next time, has gotten a nice bullet work in since that last run. And I just think Runaway Diva 10-1, I'd take a shot with this horse. Has certainly comparable buyer speed figures to anything else you're seeing in the field. I mean, look next door at a horse like All American Beauty. Has been running against maybe better competition, but maybe second back for Shug. Okay, fine. Shug's going to get bet, but this horse, I don't know. This horse hasn't won in quite a while, since April 2023, and it's 6-1. So, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot here. You have a horse like Siempre Elegante, who's on the far outside for Chad Brown. Dylan Davis coming back from over a 1.5 year layoff. Again, I kind of want to see something from that horse first, especially considering she's going to probably get a pretty wide trip. So, like I said, lucky combination up top for me, and I think Runaway Diva provides at least a little bit of value for you underneath in this race. Let's go to the Suncoast Stakes, and this is a race where I think you could make it's interesting. I almost went with my value play as my top pick. I almost kind of doubled up and just said Junta is going to be my top pick and my top value play, because I feel like this is a wide open race. I do not like Cara in this race. I'm just against her in this spot. Mark Cassie, like I said, good off the layoff. Dylan Davis up for the first time. Horse won the Pocahontas. Took a while to break its maiden. Finally did one. Got a big speed figure that day, 84. Hasn't run anywhere near that since then. Ran a 72 when winning the Pocahontas. Didn't necessarily beat much in that race. And I said, got a favorable pace set up as well. And then goes to Del Mar and disappoints pretty dramatically. I mean, finishes 5th, but by 16 1/4 lengths in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Now is coming back, Has some nice works leading up to this one for sure, but at such a short price, I'm going to be playing against Cara. Whit Beckman's horse, I'm going to take a shot with. Whit, of course, was on the Derby Trail last year with Honor Marie. He's got a couple of nice horses this year, I feel like, on the Oaks Trail, and Herlaff is one of them, winning that untappable last time out. Got up on the lead and just said, see you later. And she could just get to the lead in this one, too. It'll be interesting to see what Chloe does on the far outside for Victor Barboza Jr. That one has a lot of speed and was stretching out from 5.5 furlongs. But Herlaff, Irad Ortiz Jr. up. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's always good to see Irad up on these types of mounts for the first time. Practical joke, influence up top. I don't mind the practical jokes when we're going a mile and 40 yards. I don't mind the practical jokes when we're going a mile and a 16th, sometimes even a mile and an eighth. Mile and a quarter, different story. But again, I think you can get these shorter route races with practical joke influence up top. Horse just hasn't done anything wrong, and also showed the ability to pass horses in debut. So it doesn't need to be up in the lead. Could easily track the pace, as she did in debut at Churchill Downs. So 5-2, you're getting a little bit of a price if people get a little too enamored with Cara. Italian Soiree was a horse I was hoping would be a higher price in the morning line. That's a horse that I actually think is pretty interesting, and I would definitely pay attention to what price that horse goes off at. If that horse goes off at like 6-1, Italian Soiree is an interesting play in this race, getting blinkers on and getting back on the dirt. I just didn't expect 7-2 on the morning line. That's a little low, but I kind of understand why. Still, that one's interesting if that horse floats up. Ultimately, where I went for my value play is the number 5, Junta. Now, Junta broke its maiden at Tampa Bay easily, going 7 furlongs, and that was impressive. Now, this is a daughter of Constitution. Constitution stands for $110,000. This horse sold at the OBS 2024 sale, November sale, for $75,000. It's never a great sign when a horse sells for less than the sire fee. But she got on the track and she ran really well. And she ran a tough distance, 7 furlongs, first time out. Admittedly, got a very good trip that day. And Willie Martinez stays aboard, the jockey who gave her that good trip. She's got good speed, but doesn't need the lead. Can sit a tracking trip again, particularly if Herlaff decides to go out with Irad going on the lead. Junta could easily sit that second place trip and just track stalk the pace. This horse has fired off some nice work since then. 48 flat bullet work on January 29th. Really has come back nice since that December 24th race. So I just think this one at 12-1, again, we talked about this with another horse earlier, connections that people are probably going to overlook is going to allow you to find better value here. I think Junta at 12-1 really presents some interesting value in this race, and in a race that feels very, very, very wide open. So take a shot with somebody is what I would say. And this is one where I don't have a strong opinion. Do I think Herlaff's my top pick? Is she my top pick by a huge margin? No, not really. And do I feel good enough to single her in this spot? Absolutely not. But I think she's the most likely winner of the race. But man, Junta's going to be on my tickets for sure. Let's go to the appetizer before we get to the Sam F. Davis. And that is $53,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old fillies going a mile and a 16th on the turf. And listen, I know my friend Ed DeRosa at Horse Racing Nation complains about this. I love throwing a good maiden special weight race into the late pick 5. Why? Make it hard. There's a great movie, Road Trip, with Tom Green way back in the day. Amy Smart is in that movie. And it's kind of a dumb buddy comedy about these guys who have to go on a road trip in college. But there's a great scene where they're going down this back road and the one character says to the other, "Are you sure we're going the right way? This seems kind of hard." And the character goes, "That's why it's called a shortcut. If it was easy, it would just be called the way." And I feel that way sometimes about late pick 5s. If they were easy, everybody would do them. This is what makes them hard. And I don't mind that. So listen, this is a race where there's a couple of Chad Brown horses. And I'm going to try to beat them. Line by omission, 2-1. And you have portfolio duration, 9-5. One has Flavian, portfolio duration. One has Irad, lying by omission. Here's the thing. Lying by omission has gotten the perfect trip the last 2 times out and not been able to close the deal. Getting Lasix for the first time, maybe the horse moves forward, but the horse has been the favorite. Both starts, burned money both times. Going to try to beat that horse. Portfolio duration, making a debut, The works are solid for sure. Getting Lasix for the first time. Pratt up, Klarvich stables, a lot of things to like there for portfolio duration. Good pedigree. Still, going to try to beat that one with a wide trip from the number 9 post. Majestic Drive for Brendan Walsh, 6-1. A little bit of a better price. Still, Quality Road Offspring, making a debut. Has a couple of nice works, but Brendan, 0 for 4 at the meet. He's a barn that can run very hot and cold sometimes. Again, breaking from post position 11 could be a tough trip to work out. As a result, I kind of went a little closer inside. I went to the number 4, Mona L, for Richard Hendricks. And this one is second back from a little bit of a layoff and ran, I thought, a pretty good race last time out, earning a 64 buyer speed figure, should continue to move forward. I love Caravaggio as a sire, particularly as a turf route sire, and, winning 15% of turf route races. And it's just generally, I think, has been one of the more underrated sires that we have for that kind of middle class price of $35,000. So that one's come out and I think shown some ability in the first 2 starts. Nearly broke its maiden debut, and then I thought, like I said, I thought ran well last time up on the lead. But I think it's important. The horse showed that he can pass horses, or she can pass horses, I should say, in that debut effort. And so I'm hoping that maybe they're a little bit, they just kind of sit that pocket trip maybe. Now, admittedly, there's not necessarily a ton of other speed in this race that you'd expect a horse like Line by Omission to maybe go out up front. So maybe, Mona L just takes the initiative there and goes out up front. That would certainly not surprise me if Jose Ferrer is a little bit more aggressive, but that's 64 buyers right there with anybody else. And I like the Caravaggio influence. I like the 8-1 price. Now, if I'm going to give you 8-1 as my top pick, then value play's got to be even better, right? Number 3, Pediatric Princess, 12-1 for John Terranova, getting back on the turf. That's a good thing. The horse had to start on the dirt, start on the synthetic. Now we're getting back on the turf. Sired by Mendelssohn, out of a Bernardini mare. I like that combination when it comes to going long, that's for sure. This horse can run back to some of those efforts in those first 2 races. In terms of just the buyer speed figure itself, I think that's promising. Here's the thing, though. You could look at those first 2 efforts on the turf and go, the horse hasn't passed anyone. And you wouldn't be wrong. The horse got up front and got passed late. But the horse last time out against Maiden Special Weight Company was able to pass a couple of horses on the synthetic. So I was hoping, hey, maybe that's a little bit of a breakthrough. This horse is getting Lasix now for the first time, 12-1 on a horse getting back to, I think, his right surface in terms of getting back to the turf. I think there's something at least to like there, maybe more as an underneath play. Listen, if I'm playing the late pick 5 and I'm putting together a little bit of a broader ticket, am I including the Chad horses? Yes, of course I am. Depending on the cost that you're putting together on the ticket. But if you're just playing this one up straight, take a shot with Mona L. Why not? See if you can beat the Chads in this one and cash out a little bit. Well, let's go to the Sam F. Davis. And it's funny because here I'm not going to try to beat the Chad. But the Chad is a better price. And that is because I like Treaty of Rome at 6-1. Dylan Davis up. You don't see many times where Chad Brown has a horse in a race. Flavian and Irad are both riding in the race, and they're not on the Chad horse. Flavian is on John Hancock. Irad is on Owen Almighty. We'll talk about those 2 horses in a second. I really like Treaty of Rome, though, at 6-1. Sired by Uncle Mo and is a full sibling to Doña Veloce, who won the Santa Isabel back in 2020 and was, second by a neck to British India in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So shows the ability to get 2 turns, comes from a family where distance is going to be beneficial. Last time out, finished second to Guns Loaded. Now, Guns Loaded came back to run terrible Holy Bull, but I don't hold that against Treaty of Rome because the Mucho Macho Man, where this horse finished second, Guns Loaded is a better 1-turn horse, full stop, and was able to carve out fractions on his own that day. And yet, Treaty of Rome was able to close well behind that pace and make up ground, was really running late and nearly nabbed Guns Loaded at the wire. It shows the sort of horse that I think he's going to appreciate continuing to go long. He's gotten faster every single start. Dylan stays aboard, ran him in that Mucho Macho Man, and I thought gave him a really good ride. And, is a horse that might need to get prodded a little bit earlier than you would expect, but I think the 2 turns is going to suit him well. There's a lot of speed in this race. I think the 1 Camp Hale goes. I think John Hancock goes. I think Dr. Ruben M goes. I think Owen Almighty goes. So I think a horse that can sit from off the pace, like Treaty of Rome, is going to sit the right type of trip. 6-1. I think you get outstanding value on that type of a horse. Now, listen, John Hancock, very good horse, but first win came with Lasix. Now we're switching off Lasix. Flavian now comes up for Sammy Camacho. Brad Cox putting this one at Gulfstream or Tampa Bay Downs. Makes sense since Tappan Street ran at Gulfstream Park last week in the Holy Bull. Still, we're going from 6 furlongs to now going 2 turns. Sired by Constitution, so I have no doubts about the ability to get 2 turns. Still, going to play against this one. This one's my third choice in the race. I mean, I don't dislike the horse, but just not my top selection. Owen Almighty, I'm against this horse. Blinkers are coming on for a horse that has never done 2 turns, and the pedigree does not suggest 2 turns is necessarily what this horse wants to do. And again, a lot of speed in this race. And I wonder if he gets burned up a little bit up front going a longer distance than he has ever before. I actually think a horse like Poster may have a better chance, although I do question how good that field was that he beat in the Remsen. I mean, a horse like Aviator Guy hasn't run back. Tux ran back terribly. But, we've seen some other horses from that field not run back particularly well, including the 4th place horse Studley Do Right. So, again, kind of willing to try to beat some of those favorites and go with a horse like Treaty of Rome. Now, in terms of a bomb in this race that I like, number 1, Camp Hale for Ian Wilkes. Ian Wilkes, of course, entered the Derby chat last week in the Holy Bull with Burnham Square winning that race. So always happy to see that. Brian Hernandez Jr. up. This horse has gotten progressively slower every start, 84, 82, 79 in terms of buyer speed figures. Got Lasix last time, switching off Lasix now. But here's the thing. The horse in debut ran second at 18-1 at Keeneland to David of Athens. Why is that race notable? Not because of David of Athens necessarily. It's because that horse, the 3rd place horse is Patch Adams, who, of course, went to the Southwest and was your odds-on favorite before finishing 4th that day. Ain't No Disco's a horse that finished 4th and came back to then win a subsequent start. T-Craft finished 6th that day and came back to win 2 starts later at Aqueduct. So this horse, the maiden race has produced some nice runners for Camp Hale. He finished 2nd. Comes back 2nd time out, finishes 2nd at Guns Loaded. Well, we just talked about Guns Loaded. He's a stakes-winning runner. So not bad. And that was at 6 furlongs, which is what Guns Loaded I think will do best. Then last time out gets put up on the lead, finishes 2nd to a very well thought of Todd Pletcher horse Grande. So this horse really hasn't done much wrong, has good speed, is stretching out a little bit longer. Motown up top out of an awesome again mare. The Motown influence does scare me a little bit because we saw a horse like Mo Promise, or Mo Quality, I should say, not run particularly well in the Withers. But still, you have the awesome again influence underneath. You imagine there's a little bit of ability to get a mile and a 16th at the very least. This horse, I think, I like the job that Ian's been doing with some of his horses. He also has another one, Pitkin, who ran really well a few weeks ago on Pegasus World Cup undercard. So I just, at 20-1, take a shot with this one. Am I going to use this one on my horizontals in my late pick 5? No. But am I going to use this one in my exactas trifectas? Yes, I am. All right, well, let's go to the final race on the card, which is a $53,000 allowance race for 4-year-olds and up. Going a mile and an eighth on the turf. And again, we're going with some bombs here, people. We're trying to get paid at this last bailout race. We're trying to beat the 3-1 Safi Joseph horse on the far outside, who's going to have to work out some crazy trip. We're going to try to beat factor analysis for Chad Brown, who, is coming off a maiden win last time out, is now facing winners for the first time while breaking from post 10. Going to try to beat some of those favorites. And in particular, I'm going to use the number 3, Noble Factor, 10-1 for Darian Rodriguez, Jesus Castanon aboard. This horse broke its maiden 2-back in May of 2024 at Tampa Bay Downs. Goes to the bench from May until January, comes back, faces winners for the first time at this level, basically, and runs a really competitive 3rd. And had to go really wide to make his move that day. Broke from the number 10 post, was stuck with 5 wide. And now we're breaking from an inside post. We're not going to have to be as wide. And we're second back from that lengthy layoff. I think you're going to see the best version of this horse at 10-1. I think this horse presents outstanding value and is also my top pick in this race, and ran so competitively against winners in that last race and had a career best 80 buyer speed figure. I think this one can move forward from that. The horse that just bobbed him out at the wire for second is my value play, the number 4 Heathguard. And this one is for Roy Lerman. This one just, listen, very consistent horse, I think, at this level, at that kind of allowance level at Tampa. You saw this horse finish third by a very close margin, 2 back, then second last time out to Deuteronomy. And I just think that's kind of what this horse is, maybe a little bit more of an underneath play, but, could get the win. Ran 80 buyer speed figures last 2 times out. So you like to see that level of consistency, at least from this horse. I think I'm going to use these 2 horses coming out of that race in that final leg of the late pick 5. I might throw in one of the other horses that I mentioned earlier, but I'm going to try to get a little bit of a price in this final leg because I think it feels like a very wide open race where you could go any number of directions, and these 2 are both going to be coming from off the pace. But I would say what I like about Noble Factor is that horse has shown some tactical ability to sit a little closer to the pace before, doesn't need to come from the clouds. I wonder if Castanon gets this horse maybe a little bit closer to the pace as he did before when this horse was a maiden. So going to be interesting to see, but that's how I'm going to close things out on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Well, listen, folks, appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of Capping the Card. Like I said, make sure to press that like and subscribe button today on NYRA Bets YouTube so you can get all of our great content. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.